Welcome back to the Two Voices English podcast. I'm Mia.
And I'm Leo. We are so happy to have you here for another session of daily English listening practice. How are you doing today, Mia?
I'm doing great, Leo. Actually, I'm feeling a bit hungry because today's topic is one of my favorite things in the world, cooking.
Oh, absolutely. Cooking is such a universal language. No matter where you are from, everyone has a story about food. But let's be honest, Mia. Are you a good cook or are you a master of ordering takeout?
Hey, I've improved a lot lately. I used to be terrible. I once burned water, if you can believe that. But now I find the kitchen very relaxing. It's like a ritual for me. What about you? Do you enjoy being in the kitchen?
I do, but I'm a practical cook. I don't like recipes with 50 different ingredients. If it takes more than 30 minutes to prepare, I start losing my patience. For me, cooking is about survival, but I try to make it tasty survival.
That's a good way to put it. Let's start at the beginning of the day, breakfast. They say it's the most important meal of the day. Are you a big breakfast person?
Not really. During the week, I'm usually in a rush. I'll just grab a piece of toast or a protein bar and a huge cup of black coffee. Coffee is the real breakfast for me. Without it, I can't even find the kitchen.
I'm the opposite. I can't start my day without a proper meal. I love making scrambled eggs. There's something so satisfying about the process. Cracking the eggs, whisking them in a bowl with a little bit of milk, salt, and pepper, and then that sizzle when they hit the pan.
See, that sounds like a lot of work for 7 a.m. When you make scrambled eggs, do you add anything special? I've heard people put cheese or even chives in them.
Oh, definitely cheese. A bit of sharp cheddar makes everything better. And I like my eggs fluffy. The secret is to cook them on low heat and keep stirring. If the heat is too high, they get rubbery, and nobody likes rubbery eggs.
Rubbery eggs. Yeah, that's a classic cooking fail. I prefer sunny side-up eggs if I have time. With the yolk still runny so I can dip my toast into it.
Oh, the dippy egg. That's a classic. Speaking of toast, are you a butter person or a jam person?
Neither. I'm an avocado toast fan. It's a bit of a cliche, I know, but a little bit of mashed avocado with some red pepper flakes on sourdough bread, that's heaven.
That sounds very Instagram friendly, Leo. Very trendy. But you mentioned sourdough. Do you bake your own bread?
No way. I tried making bread once during the lockdown, like everyone else. It came out looking like a rock. I think I could have used it as a doorstop. I leave the baking to the professionals now. Baking is more like science, isn't it? You have to be so precise.
It really is. Cooking is an art. You can add a little of this and a little of that, but baking is chemistry. If you use 1 teaspoon of baking soda instead of a tablespoon, the whole thing is ruined.
Exactly. That's why I prefer one-pot meals. You just throw everything in a pot, let it simmer, and hope for the best.
We should definitely talk about those one-pot disasters and successes in the next part. But before we finish this segment, let's give our listeners a word of the day.
Great idea. How about the word sizzle?
Perfect. Sizzle. Sizzle. It's the sound that food makes when it's frying in a hot pan. For example, the bacon started to sizzle as soon as it touched the skillet.
I love that sound. It's the sound of happiness.
It really is. Well, listeners, what about you? Do you prefer a quick coffee like Leo or a full cooked breakfast like me? Think about how you would describe your morning routine in English.
We're just getting started. Coming up next, we're going to talk about the essential tools every kitchen needs and our secret grocery shopping habits.
Stay tuned. Speaking of kitchen habits, I have a confession to make, Leo. You know how I said I'm becoming a better cook? Well, I've also become a bit of a gadget collector.
Oh no, what did you buy this time? Please don't tell me it's another electric vegetable spiralizer that you'll only use once a year.
Close. I just bought a specialized avocado slicer. It's designed to peel, pit, and slice the avocado perfectly in one motion. It seems so revolutionary in the store.
Mia, we've talked about this. You know what else does that? A simple, sharp kitchen knife. This is exactly why I consider myself a practical cook. My kitchen drawers aren't overflowing with plastic tools that only have one job. I like things that are versatile.
I know. But gadgets make the kitchen feel like a playground. It makes the process feel less like a chore. Don't you have at least one appliance that you think is actually worth the counter space?
Well, if we are talking about appliances, I have to admit my air fryer has become my best friend. I thought it was just a trend at first, but it's actually life-changing. You can make anything in there. Chicken wings, roasted potatoes, even broccoli, and it's so much faster than a traditional oven.
I'll give you that one. The air fryer is a game changer for anyone who wants that crunchy texture without using a gallon of oil. It's much healthier. But what about basic tools? What do you think is the most essential thing for a beginner to invest in?
That's easy. A high-quality chef's knife. A lot of beginners try to cook with cheap, dull knives, and that's actually more dangerous because you have to apply so much pressure to cut anything. A sharp knife makes chopping onions or dicing carrots feel like cutting through butter.
That's a great point. And I would add a good non-stick skillet to that list. There's nothing more frustrating for a new cook than having your omelet or your pancakes get stuck and turn into a mess. A good pan gives you confidence.
Confidence is key in the kitchen, but before you can even start cooking, you have to go to the source, the grocery store. How do you handle your shopping, Mia? Are you a list maker or a wanderer?
Oh, I am a dedicated list maker. I use an app on my phone and I organize it by aisle. If it's not on the list, it doesn't go in the cart. Otherwise, I end up buying 5 boxes of snacks and totally forget the main ingredients for dinner.
I wish I had your discipline. I usually make the biggest mistake an adult can make. I go grocery shopping when I'm hungry. Everything looks amazing when your stomach is growling. I'll go in for a carton of milk and come out with 3 types of cheese, a frozen pizza, and a giant chocolate cake.
Rule number one of Adulting 101, Leo, never ever go to the supermarket on an empty stomach. You'll spend twice as much money and buy half as much real food.
Lesson learned, the hard way, multiple times. Do you prefer the big supermarkets or the local farmers markets?
I love the farmer's market for fresh produce. There's something so inspiring about the colors of the bell peppers and the smell of fresh herbs like cilantro and rosemary. But for the pantry staples, things like flour, sugar, or olive oil, the big supermarket is just more practical.
I agree, but I find that the quality of vegetables at a farmer's market is just on another level. The tomatoes actually taste like tomatoes, not like watery plastic. It makes a huge difference in the final dish.
It really does. When you start with fresh, high-quality ingredients, you don't even have to do much to them. A little salt, some pepper, maybe a squeeze of lemon, and you have a gourmet meal.
Simple is better, as they say. Though when I'm shopping, I always get overwhelmed in the spice aisle. There are 50 different types of salt and hundreds of dried herbs. How do you know what to choose?
I think it's best to start with the basics: salt, black pepper, garlic powder, and maybe some dried oregano or basil. You don't need a whole spice rack on day one. You can build it up as you try new recipes.
That's a relief. I always felt like I was failing at cooking because I didn't own a smoked paprika or turmeric.
Not at all. It's better to have 5 spices you use every day than 50 spices that just sit there and get dusty for 3 years.
Exactly. It's better to master the basics first. Speaking of basics, once you have your ingredients and your tools, you actually have to start the process. And I think this is where many people, including myself, get a little intimidated by the terminology.
You mean the cooking verbs, like the difference between sautéing and searing?
Precisely. For a long time, I thought sauté was just a fancy word French people used for frying.
Well, in a way, it is, but there's a nuance. Sautéing is about cooking food quickly in a small amount of oil over medium-high heat while keeping the food moving. That's why the word actually means jumped in French. You're making the vegetables jump in the pan.
That explains why I always see chefs shaking the pan like crazy.
I usually just let my onions sit there until they start to smell like they're burning.
Oh, Leo, no. You have to keep them moving. And then there's simmering. That's one I struggled with. I used to think if the water wasn't bubbling like a volcano, it wasn't cooking.
Right, the difference between boiling and simmering. Boiling is aggressive. It's for pasta or potatoes. But simmering is gentle. It's like a quiet conversation between the ingredients. It's when you see just a few small bubbles breaking the surface. It's essential for soups and stews because it lets the flavors meld together without breaking the food apart.
Melding the flavors. I like that. It sounds so poetic. But let's talk about the practical side of time management. We've covered breakfast, but what about lunch? In a busy workday, lunch is usually the meal that gets ignored.
It really does. For me, lunch is often a keyboard meal, meaning I'm eating a sad sandwich while typing on my computer. It's not very healthy and certainly not very relaxing.
That's where meal prep saves the day. I've started dedicated meal prep Sundays. I spend about 2 hours on Sunday afternoon preparing components for the week.
See, I've tried that, but I always run into the boredom problem. If I cook a giant pot of chili on Sunday, by Wednesday I'm so tired of chili that I'd rather eat a shoe.
I totally get that. The secret isn't to prep full meals, it's to prep building blocks. I'll roast a big tray of seasonal vegetables, boil a batch of quinoa or rice, and maybe grill some chicken or seasoned tofu.
So you don't make the final dish until the day you eat it.
Exactly. On Monday, I might take those ingredients and make a Mediterranean bowl with some hummus and feta. On Tuesday, I can throw the same chicken and veggies into a pan with some soy sauce and ginger for a quick stir fry. It feels like a completely different meal, but the hard work, the chopping, and the long cooking is already done.
That's actually a very smart strategy. It solves the soggy leftovers issue too. I find that if I microwave a pre-made pasta dish, it never tastes as good as it did on day one.
Definitely. Some things just don't reheat well, but things like stews, curries, and sauces actually taste better the next day because the spices have had more time to soak into everything.
That's true. A day-old curry is a beautiful thing. While we are on the topic of techniques, what's your take on seasoning? I feel like beginners are either terrified of salt or they use so much it tastes like seawater.
It's all about layers. You should season as you go, not just at the very end. But it's not just about salt and pepper. If a dish tastes flat or boring, it usually doesn't need more salt, it needs acid.
Acid, like vinegar?
Yes, or a squeeze of fresh lemon or lime juice. Acid brightens the flavor. It cuts through the fat and makes everything pop. If I'm making a soup and it feels like it's missing something, a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar usually fixes it instantly.
I'm going to try that tonight. I usually just keep adding salt until my blood pressure rises. What about herbs? Do you go for fresh or dried?
I prefer fresh for finishing a dish, like adding fresh basil to a pasta or cilantro to a taco. But for things that cook for a long time, like a roast or a slow simmered sauce, dried herbs are actually better because they can handle the heat.
That makes sense. I have a hard time keeping fresh herbs alive anyway. My windowsill is a graveyard for basil plants. They are so dramatic. If you forget to water them for 5 minutes, they just wither away.
They really are the divas of the planet world. But even if you use dried herbs, a good tip is to crush them in your palm before adding them to the pot. It wakes up the oils and brings back some of that flavor.
Waking up the herbs. I like that. It sounds like we're giving them a little pep talk before they go to work.
Exactly. And once you've mastered the seasoning and the simmering, you have to think about the texture. A good meal should have a bit of everything. Something soft, something crunchy, something creamy.
That's why people put croutons on salad or toasted nuts on top of a stir fry. It adds that crunch factor.
Precisely. It keeps your brain interested in what you're eating. If everything is the same texture, it starts to feel like baby food after a few bites.
Well, I'm feeling a lot more confident about my dinner tonight. I think I'll try a sauté and maybe even brighten it up with some lemon.
That's the spirit. Just remember, the kitchen is a laboratory. It's okay to make mistakes. Some of my best recipes came from experiments where I used the wrong ingredient and it ended up tasting better than the original.
Speaking of accidents and experimenting, I've been trying to expand my horizons lately. I feel like I always cook the same three things. Do you ever get bored of your own cooking style?
All the time. That's when I start looking for inspiration from world cuisines. I think that's the best way to keep things exciting. One week I'm obsessed with Italian flavors, lots of basil, balsamic vinegar, and parmesan, and the next week I'm trying to figure out how to make a proper Japanese miso soup.
I'm definitely in a spice phase right now. I've been buying all sorts of dried chilies and hot sauces. I think Asian and Mexican cuisines are so brilliant because of the way they balance heat with sweetness and acidity. Do you handle spicy food well?
I'm a bit of a wimp when it comes to spice, honestly. If a dish has too much chili, my eyes start watering and I can't taste anything else. I prefer flavorful over hot. Like Indian food where you have cumin and coriander and turmeric. It's warm and aromatic, but it doesn't necessarily have to burn your tongue off.
I love that burn. There's actually a term for it, endorphin rush. When you eat something really spicy, your brain releases chemicals that make you feel happy. But I agree, Indian cuisine is the king of spices. Have you ever tried making a curry from scratch? Not from a jar, but starting with the whole spices.
I have. It's a bit intimidating because you have to toast the spices first. You put the seeds in a dry pan until they start to pop and release their aroma. It's a completely different smell than using pre-ground powder. It makes the whole house smell like an international market.
That's the authentic way to do it. That's a word we hear a lot in the food world, isn't it? Authentic. Everyone wants the authentic experience, but sometimes I actually enjoy fusion cuisine. You know, when you mix two different cultures, like a Korean barbecue taco.
Oh, those are amazing. It's the best of both worlds. But tell me, Leo, with all this talk about cooking at home, do you still enjoy dining out? Or do you just sit there in the restaurant criticizing the chef because you know how to saute now?
No. I think I appreciate restaurants more now that I know how much work goes into a single plate of food. When I see a beautifully presented dish, I think about the prep time, the timing of the stove, and the cleanup. I'm happy to pay someone else to do the dishes for me.
That's the best part of a restaurant, the magic of the disappearing mess. But I find that my criteria for a good restaurant has changed. I used to look for the trendiest places, the fine dining spots with white tablecloths. Now I'm all about the hidden gems.
Oh, I love a good hidden gem, like that tiny hole-in-the-wall place that only serves one type of noodle, but it's the best noodle you've ever had in your life.
Exactly. And often those places have the most street food vibe. There's no ego, just good ingredients. Have you ever had a memorable food experience while traveling? Something you can't find back home?
Definitely. I remember being in a small village in Italy and I had a simple pasta dish, just olive oil, garlic, and fresh truffles. It was so simple, but the ingredients were so fresh that I almost cried. It made me realize that expensive doesn't always mean better. It's all about the quality of the produce.
I had a similar experience in Thailand with street food. I was sitting on a plastic stool on a busy sidewalk, eating a bowl of pad thai that cost about $2. The balance of salty, sour, and sweet was more complex than any high-end meal I've had in a big city.
That's the beauty of travel. It breaks your food prejudices. You might think you don't like a certain ingredient, like cilantro or fish sauce, until you have it in its original context, prepared by someone who has been making that one dish for 40 years.
It's an acquired taste sometimes, like blue cheese or olives. Most kids hate those things, but as you get older, your palate matures. You start to appreciate the umami, that savory, deep flavor you find in things like mushrooms, soy sauce, and aged cheeses.
Umami, the fifth taste. It's what makes food feel satisfying, right? I think that's why people love pizza and burgers so much. They are umami bombs.
They really are. But even with all these international options, do you ever just crave comfort food? The stuff your parents or grandparents used to make for you when you were sick or had a bad day.
Absolutely.
For me, it's a big bowl of mashed potatoes with way too much butter. It's not fancy, it's not authentic to any world cuisine, but it feels like a hug in a bowl.
A hug in a bowl. I love that. For me, it's chicken noodle soup. Every time I smell celery and onions simmering in a broth, I feel like I'm 7 years old again. It's amazing how food is so closely tied to our memories.
It's like a time machine. You can smell a certain spice or taste a specific sauce, and suddenly you're back in your grandmother's kitchen 10 years ago.
Which is why I think everyone should learn at least 3 or 4 basic recipes, not just to survive, but to be able to create those memories for other people. Being able to cook for your friends or family is such a great gift.
I agree. There's something very social about it, breaking bread with people. It's the ultimate way to connect, no matter what language you speak.
Well, speaking of connecting, we've talked about the tools, the techniques, and the flavors, but there's one thing we haven't touched on yet: the dark side of cooking.
You mean the failures, the burnt cakes, and the oversalted soups?
Exactly. I think we need to share our biggest kitchen nightmares to make our listeners feel better about their own mistakes.
Oh, the dark side. I've been waiting for this. If people think I'm some kind of professional because of my air fryer, they are very wrong. I've had some absolute disasters in the kitchen.
I think everyone has that one story they're embarrassed to tell. My worst one happened a few years ago when I invited my new neighbors over for dinner. I wanted to make a fancy chocolate cake.
A cake? You already told me baking is like chemistry. That was a risky move for a dinner party.
I know, I was overconfident. I was moving too fast and I grabbed the white powder from the pantry without looking closely. I thought it was powdered sugar for the frosting. It wasn't.
Let me guess. Salt?
Worse, baking soda. I put a huge amount of baking soda into the frosting. When the neighbors took their first bite, their faces went completely pale. They were trying to be polite, but baking soda has this horrible, metallic, salty taste. It actually makes your tongue feel like it's fizzing.
Oh no, did they spit it out?
One of them actually did into his napkin. I felt so bad. We ended up throwing the whole cake in the trash and eating bowls of cereal for dessert. It was a complete kitchen nightmare.
That's a classic. My biggest fail was a fire alarm incident. I was trying to sear a steak, get that nice brown crust on the outside, but I didn't realize that my olive oil had a low smoke point.
Oh, I know where this is going.
Within 2 minutes, the kitchen was filled with thick black smoke. I couldn't even see the stove. Suddenly, the smoke detector started screaming, beep, 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 and it was 11 p.m. My neighbors thought the building was burning down. I had to stand on a chair and wave a towel at the ceiling for 10 minutes.
And the steak?
It was a piece of charcoal. Inedible. I think inedible is the saddest word in the cooking vocabulary. It means you spent time, money, and effort, and the result is basically trash.
It really is. But you mentioned something important: smoke point. That's a great technical term. Different oils can handle different temperatures. If you use extra virgin olive oil for high heat frying, it's a recipe for disaster. It burns and tastes bitter.
Exactly. You should use something like avocado oil or canola oil for high heat. See, we learn from our mistakes. What's another major don't in the kitchen?
Never, ever leave a wooden spoon or a towel near the gas burner. I once set a tea towel on fire because I laid it down too close to the flame while I was answering a text message. Distraction is the enemy of a good cook.
A watched pot never boils, but an unwatched pan always burns. That should be a law. Another mistake I see people make, and I used to do this, is not reading the entire recipe before starting.
Oh, that's a big one. You get halfway through and the recipe says, now let the dough rest in the fridge for 6 hours. And you're like, but I want it to eat in 20 minutes.
Or it says add the room temperature butter and yours is a frozen block of ice. It ruins the whole flow. Now I do what the pros call mise en place.
Look at you with the French terms. Mise en place literally means everything in its place. It means you chop all your veggies, measure your spices, and get your pans ready before you even turn on the heat.
It makes the whole process so much more relaxing.
No more running around the kitchen looking for the paprika while the onions are burning. It turns a chaotic experience into a calm one.
I think the most important thing to remember is that even professional chefs have bad days in the kitchen. Sometimes a dish just doesn't work out. Maybe you overcook the pasta, or maybe the sauce is too thin.
And that's okay. That's why takeaway was invented. If all else fails, keep the local pizza place on speed dial. There's no shame in admitting defeat once in a while.
Very true. But I think the failures teach you more than the successes. Now I always taste my frosting before I put it on a cake.
Good rule. Well, we've talked about the fun, the tools, the techniques, and the disasters. I feel like we've covered almost everything.
Almost. But we still need to talk about the future, how to stay healthy while enjoying all this food, and some final tips for our listeners who want to start their own cooking journey.
I'm looking forward to that. It's been quite a trip through the kitchen today.
We've had a lot of laughs talking about our kitchen disasters, but let's look at the bigger picture for a moment. Cooking isn't just about surviving or avoiding setting the kitchen on fire, it's also about how we take care of ourselves.
You're right. We live in a world where everything is fast. Fast food, fast life. But I think there's a growing movement towards slow food and mindful eating. Have you noticed how many people are moving away from processed foods and going back to basics?
Definitely. There's a lot of talk about clean eating and whole foods. For those listening, whole foods aren't just a store. It refers to food that is processed or refined as little as possible. Think of a potato versus a potato chip.
That's a perfect example. I try to follow the 80-20 rule. I eat nutritious, healthy meals 80% of the time, and the other 20%, well, that's for my guilty pleasures, like that double cheese pizza or a giant slice of chocolate cake. Without the baking soda, of course.
Balance is everything. If you're too strict, you just end up miserable. But speaking of trends, have you seen how social media has changed cooking? I feel like every time I open my phone, there's a new viral recipe.
Oh, like the baked feta pasta or those accordion potatoes. It's amazing because it makes cooking look so accessible and fun for younger generations. It's not just grandmas in the kitchen anymore, it's teenagers making gourmet meals for TikTok.
It's great, but sometimes I think people focus too much on the aesthetics, how the food looks, and not enough on how it tastes. They spend 20 minutes taking the perfect photo, and by the time they eat, the food is cold.
Guilty as charged. I've definitely let my soup get cold while trying to get the right lighting. But on the positive side, the internet has made it so easy to learn. If you don't know how to poach an egg, you can watch a 30-second video and become an expert instantly.
It's true, the barriers to entry are gone. And another thing I love about modern cooking is the focus on sustainability. People are much more aware of food waste now. Instead of throwing away vegetable scraps, they're making their own broth. Or they're using ugly vegetables that stores used to throw away.
I love that. Ugly vegetables still taste delicious. It's all about being creative. And honestly, Leo, I think cooking and learning a language have a lot in common.
Oh? Tell me your theory, Mia.
Well, at first, both feel overwhelming. You look at a recipe or a grammar book and think, I can never do this. You make mistakes, you burn the toast, or you use the wrong tense. But then you practice. You do it every day, and slowly you stop looking at the instructions. You start to feel the language, just like you start to feel the seasoning.
I love that analogy. It's all about fluency. You want to be fluent in the kitchen just like you want to be fluent in English. You start with the basics, and eventually you're improvising and adding your own personality to it.
Exactly. So to our listeners, don't be afraid to break an egg in both senses. Try a new English phrase today and maybe try a new ingredient tonight. Even if it's just adding a new spice to your instant noodles, it's a start.
That's a great way to wrap this up. We've covered everything from breakfast rituals to global spices and from kitchen tools to massive failures. Cooking is a journey, not a destination.
It really is, and it's a journey that's much better when you share it with others. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the world of food and daily English.
It's been a blast. I think I'm actually going to go home and try to make that hole-in-the-wall pasta dish I told you about. I'll make sure the fire alarm stays quiet this time.
Good luck, Leo. And to everyone listening, keep practicing, keep cooking, and most importantly, keep enjoying the process.
We'll be back soon with more conversations and more daily English practice. But for now, that's all from us.
Happy cooking, everyone!
And happy learning!